The Kentucky Wildcats are going to beat the Auburn Tigers on Saturday, and this is how they're going to do it.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the number one team in the nation, the Auburn Tigers. I believe Kentucky's going to beat the Tigers, and I'm going to tell you how they're going to do it on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would love it if you subscribe to the show. Thank you to everyone that has. And if you've got a prediction for this game, whether it's based off of something that I tell you here today, or if it's just a final score prediction that you have on your own, would love for you to leave it in the comments below. At Locked On UK is where you can hit me on Twitter if you've got thoughts there. All right. Let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball facing off against the number one team in the nation, the Auburn Tigers, on Saturday. Going to be the biggest game of the year so far for the Cats, just based on a quality of opponent in Rupp Arena. All of the stakes are here. We're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about how Kentucky's going to beat them. We're going to talk about how Auburn has been beaten so far this season and their two losses to Duke and Florida. Let's dive into it. I've got four major points here to start. How Kentucky is going to beat the Auburn Tigers. These are the four things that you need to look at in order for you to grab a victory if you are Mark Pope and UK. First and foremost, if Kentucky's going to beat Auburn, they have to be healthy. Having Lamont, Butler, or Jaxson Robinson, or both of them back for this game would be huge. Butler played more than Jax, obviously, against Oklahoma. I think matchup-wise, Jaxson Robinson could end up being a massive part of this game. We'll get to that later on in the show, but I think you need to have one or both of them here in order to have a shot at taking down Auburn. I believe that's going to happen. I actually think if anything's going to happen, you're going to have both of these guys ready. I think it was a smart decision by Mark Pope to rest Jaxson Robinson, make sure that he got the ice on his wrist after his 12 minutes of play against Oklahoma. He didn't play poorly, I don't think, actually. He hit a couple of shots. He had 7 points, a really nice cut there in the first half. If you had seen him maybe make one of those first couple of threes, he would have finished with double-digit scoring in just 12 minutes of play. I think Jax could be massive this weekend, and then obviously with what Lamont Butler brings you defensively, you need to have him on the floor against Auburn's trio of really high-profile guards. If you cannot have Jax back for this game, Brea has to step up in a major way. Again, we'll get to matchups here later on in the show. The second thing you have to look at is you have to have production across the board. I do not think Kentucky can go into Rupp Arena on Saturday and beat Auburn if they have a couple of players that have high-profile go-off type games. Ortega did a phenomenal job against Oklahoma, scoring the last 18 points, 21 of the last 23, dominated the second half for the Cats, but I don't think that will simply be enough to beat a team like Auburn. You have to have a well-rounded performance and make them respect every position on the floor, because I think that stresses them out a little bit and it opens things up, obviously, for you offensively. Specifically here, I think that your bench needs to contribute more than they have normally this season. You look at a game like Tennessee in Rupp Arena, where Kentucky got major production out of both Travis Perry and Trent Noah. Specifically here, Perry and Noah have to have a step-up type game again, where they make you guard them. You have to be able to respect Trent Noah's ability to fire in transition. You have to respect Travis Perry's ability to not only shoot, but distribute. He has to be more in this game. Production across the board. You need Garrison, you need Almanor, you need Brea, you need everybody stepping up 1 through 5, contributing in one way, shape, or form. Third thing here, you have to be better than Auburn mentally. I think this comes with pace, style of play, and I think it comes with speeding them up and beating them inside. If you are able to do both of those things, speed Auburn up and then beat them inside, and what I mean is not just scoring at the rim. You have to be able to to an extent, control both aspects of the rim, both offensively and defensively. If you can score, draw fouls inside, if you can go on the other end of the floor, if you can block shots, if you can get rebounds, if you can get stops, speeding them up and making them chaotic while also beating them at the rim is going to go an extremely long way in this game. It's all about applying pressure mentally and making them rush decisions, which, again, we'll get to in more detail here in just a little bit. And the fourth thing you have to do is you have to go back and look at how Duke and Florida beat the Tigers. How did Duke and Florida go and actually handle Auburn offensively and defensively, and how can Kentucky attack that here in this contest? If you do all four of those things, if you are healthy, if you have production, if you are better mentally, and if you take notes from how Florida and Duke went and attacked Auburn, you are going to have success in this game, and you are going to win it. We'll dive into how how Duke and Florida both exposed some things that Auburn does, while also looking at some of the bigger matchups here in this contest. We'll do all of that here in just a second. Before I do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Roy. Attention, Kentucky fans. The future of college sports is here, and it's transparent because before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table. Fans didn't really have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they loved, but now with Roy, you get the opportunity to be a part of the change and support Kentucky athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player that you want to support. If it's a Kentucky basketball player, if it's a Kentucky football player, baseball, if it's somebody on the women's basketball team, any player you want to support, and you can decide how much that you want to contribute to said player. You receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back, and the best part is, if your player transfers away, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way here to show your support to Kentucky. And for a limited time, Roy is matching up to $100 per Kentucky fan. That means your impact is doubled, helping keeping your favorite players right where they belong. The Roy app is giving Kentucky fans control. There's no uncertainty here. You can now provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the teams and the future of college sports with your contributions. You can download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Locked On Kentucky athletes the way that they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real, meaningful impact. This right here is the future of college sports. You can join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. All right, continuing along here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hey, if you did not go check out the Locked On SEC Squad show here that was already up on the channel, up on the podcast feed as well, I'd encourage you to go check it out. Get your football fix here. Of course, we'll talk about football once the basketball season ends, but of course, we're sticking here with the biggest matchup of the weekend, in my opinion, Auburn versus Kentucky. We've talked about the four major things that Kentucky needs to do in this game if they want to win. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. We'll get into the details. I want to take a sip of water from my Locked On mug here real quick. All right. This is how Kentucky is going to beat Auburn. Let's talk about the big matchups. And this may be me going out on a little bit of a limb here. I think Amari Williams matches up favorably with Johni Broome in a couple of different ways. Before I mention those, I do want to point out that Broome is, in my opinion, the best player in the country. He is a phenomenal scorer inside. He's a great distributor because he draws so much attention. He can handle the ball. He can shoot it. Do not let his percentages fool you. He is a decent outside shooter. He is a versatile big man that Auburn actually, over the time that he's been there, has slid from the 5 to the 4. He can play in between both positions, but really, they're running a two big lineup with Dylan Cardwell and Johni Broome, two very experienced players that I think pair very well with each other. But Broome, I think, could have some issues against Amari Williams this Saturday because of what Amari presents to him physically. It's a guy that is not only his height, but also someone that is 10 to 15 pounds heavier than him. And with the way that Amari Williams has been playing as of late, you expect him to come into this game and continue to play as well as he has. He's been really good defensively, especially whenever he's been aggressive. He's been really, really good offensively. Had that triple-double against Ole Miss. Somebody on Twitter actually corrected me. It was the 4th triple-double in Kentucky history, not the 2nd that he had against the Rebels a couple of weeks ago. But Amari, I think defensively, if he comes in playing spirited ball like he has as of late, I think he's got a chance to control some things against Broome. Now, I think, again, at points, Broome is going to get his, but relative to some of the other opponents Auburn has played, I think Broome can be held in check. On paper, I think held in check, by the way, is like 12 to 14 points, 10 to 14 points. I think you can do that to Broome in this spot, which is why Amari Williams versus Johni Broome is a huge matchup for me. The second reason that Amari versus Broome is a huge matchup is because of the way that Broome is also, on the other side of it, going to have to guard Amari. You see Kentucky's offense. You know how it goes if you're a Kentucky fan. You get Amari at the top. You get him dictating so many different things that Kentucky wants to do off ball. If things are not available, what does Amari typically do? What has he done so well recently? Takes the ball inside, goes to run and dunk, or he goes to finish. He puts himself, backs the guy up into the post. He drives headfirst to lay it in. He's been super effective in that area. You put Johni Broome in a spot that he has not necessarily been in this entire season, which is having to guard a guy that's as big as him, both height and weight-wise, coming downhill at the rim with the intention to score. Put him in a position to pick up fouls. I think Amari has the ability to absolutely do that this weekend. Of course, that comes down to, can Amari hit his free throws? Can he finish at the rim against Broome? That will have to be seen here. But I think, again, on paper, I like the way Amari matches up with Broome for a variety of reasons. We'll see how it pans out. But if Kentucky's going to beat Auburn, they're going to have a good game from Amari. They're also going to have a good game from Jax or Brea against Chad Baker Mazzara, an instigator, somebody that likes to talk a little trash, somebody that likes to get fired up on the court, as you have seen. I think he had a stretch here recently where he had 3 straight games where he received a technical foul. Jax, Brea, first of all, you got to maintain your composure mentally. Second of all, you have to be able to play up on CBM. If you look at the way that CBM operates, he is a lighter wing. He will step back and hit shots on you. He will take threes, and he's a pretty dang efficient shooter. But what you need to do is make him into a passer or a scorer immediately off the ball or off the dribble. I think that's where Kentucky can live with how he operates offensively. Jax has to be aggressive. I think Brea has to be aggressive. Force him to put the ball on the deck or to shoot it immediately. We're going to talk more about the mental side of things here in just a little bit. I think that's going to be a lot of Kentucky's philosophy, is speeding this thing up here against guys like CBM. Because while he may be a great three-point shooter, you've got guys that I think physically can match up with him at that 3 spot. Jax on the offensive side of the ball, Brea on the offensive side of the ball. What you have to be able to do is to get, again, CBM off balance. You have to be able to make sharp cuts. You have to be willing to expend a lot of energy running around, trying to get open. You have to create for yourself in this one, and you have to take away the creation from CBM. I don't think that he can drive effectively on either of these 2 players. I will eat my words if that ends up happening. But, man, Jax would be huge, would be a huge aggressive shooter in this one if he was able to knock down shots and at least get open, which I think, just based on what I've seen against Duke and Florida, Kentucky's going to have their opportunities, I think, in this game. The third matchup here, and this one may go under the radar because of how Otega's playing. Otega Oweh versus Denver Jones. Denver Jones, in case you don't know, played at FIU for a couple of seasons, averaged 20 in his final season with the Panthers before transferring to Auburn. Last year kind of split time in their backcourt, and this season has been very good defensively, and over these past several games has kind of taken over at various points as a true scorer, as we saw at FIU. He's a tweener between point and shooting guard, a great versatile player that Auburn has in their backcourt. You don't really think about how Jones could operate defensively in this game, at least if you're a Kentucky fan, until you actually go out on the court and see it. Both these guys similarly built, 6'4", 200 plus pounds. Both guys like to drive inside. I think Dawe more so than Jones. Jones is a great defender, but at various points you do wonder, what does Dawe have here that he could, again, go after when it comes to what Jones provides him defensively? I think Dawe, at the end of the day, while both these guys do drive to the rim pretty well, I think Dawe is a more impactful scorer there. And so, again, this is about speeding things up. This is about getting downhill, making Auburn make decisions quickly on what you want to do offensively, whether it's put you on the line or it's give up a basket at the rim. Dawe has to be an aggressor just like he was in that second half there against Oklahoma just a couple of days ago. Dawe has to be a punisher at the rim is what I wrote here in my notes, and a stable player on defense. You cannot let Jones get free from three. You make him into a driver, because again, while he is effective, he is not as effective there as he is shooting or distributing. Make him into a driver and make him contest stuff at the basket. Pick and roll here, I think, with Ortega and Williams, Carr, Garrison, whatever big man you want to slide in here. I think P&R could be big at various points in this game for Kentucky, especially if it's some sort of P&R where you could get the ball to Williams on the roll and you could kick out for a three. If they want to overhelp the driver, give it to Williams, and if they were able to rotate over in time, whether it be Broome, Cardwell, or just one of the two, or Chaney Johnson, who's a player we'll get to here in just a second. If they want to be the aggressor and come over help or just help, period, catch and shoot, drive and kick stuff, I think is going to be very important for UK. You got to be able to find new ways, I think, in this contest to create some open looks. You saw, I think there was an interesting tweet that popped out recently. I can't remember if it was a member of the KSR crew or not, but Kentucky's added some Peja action to their stuff recently, which is kind of what I'm talking about here, where you go inside out, and then you get that open look from the top. So we'll see what Kentucky does here, X's and O's wise, but Ortega, I think, as a primary ball handler, could be big in this game. I don't know if Kentucky's going to ask him to be a little bit more of a distributor, but I think he could find a lot of success in doing so, especially when you put him in another action with another player like Williams or Carr or Garrison. Speaking of Carr, let's get to the fourth most important matchup here. It's Carr versus Chaney Johnson. Chaney is a former D2 player, played at, I believe, it wasn't North Alabama. I think it was like North Alabama Huntsville or something like that. Johnson, way more physical than Andrew Carr is. Similar height, and Johnson, just an incredible inside game. You can get him at the rim. You can get him spotting up there around the block. He can shoot all the way out to the free throw line. He's a decent three-point shooter as well. Carr on defense has to be an aggressor, and he has to be even more aggressive on offense. You have to put Auburn in positions where they either foul you or you make a basket. It's one of the two. You cannot let yourself get flustered with inefficient shots at the rim that don't go in. It's all about pace and beating Auburn inside. If you start to work things up inside with the guys that you have, you can then expand your game to the perimeter with your transition if you are able to get stops. Even if you're not able to get stops, speeding the game up, I think, is going to be super important, which brings us to our final segment here, where we talk about the keys to the game, the more specific stuff that Kentucky needs to do. I've got 4 things here for you. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. March basketball, of course, is almost here. If you've seen the buzzer beaters recently, you know there's no better time to get in on college basketball action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and it keeps every game exciting. You can build lineups like this week. I was looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points, AD for more than 12 rebounds. I can make my pick in less than a minute and stay engaged all game long. It's super fun, and when I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes. There's no waiting around here. They've also got some pretty fun deals as well. They offer weekly promos like Taco Tuesday. You can get discounted player projections on for stuff on even more value. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's a pretty sweet deal. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. You can run your game. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you again. If you've not subscribed to the show, left a comment, let me know what you think about this game. Do so. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Really appreciate the people that have been watching the show and continue to contribute their thoughts, even though sometimes not everybody agrees. I think that's super fair. It's not just my opinion here, it's yours as well. So sound off. I would like to hear from you what you think about this one. Okay, we'll get to our final keys to the game here. So we talked generically about stuff Kentucky has to do. Let's get more specific. First and foremost, I think Kentucky has to have a hyper-efficient offense. Look at the Duke and Florida games. Both of those teams had pretty dang efficient offenses, and if they weren't hitting the shot the first go-round, they were attacking Auburn on the glass. If you want to look at what Florida did, if I'm not mistaken, they grabbed 15 offensive rebounds. I'm having to pull the KenPom box score back up. They grabbed 11 or 12 offensive rebounds, scored a ton of second chance points. Duke as well crashed the glass a pretty decent amount as well. 12 offensive rebounds for them. Ended up being some for both teams. If you want to watch the tape, some big rebounds, kickouts, and threes. Shout out Isaiah Evans, who has been at almost a moot point, or a non-factor, I should say, for the Blue Devils, like since his coming out party against Auburn, where he had, coming off the bench? Yeah, 18 points, was 6 of 8 from 3. You have to have a hyper-efficient offense. What does that mean? Even more specifically, you need to be 55+% from 2 and 39+% from 3. Both Duke and Florida did both of those things. You need to have 8 turnovers or less. Duke only had 4. Florida had 12, but because of what they were able to do on the glass and because they hit 13 threes, they kind of got away with some stuff. I think that you need to be turnoverless, essentially, while shooting a very high clip, both inside and outside the arc. You also, I think, need to be very disciplined from the charity stripe. I think you need 80+%. Florida shot 83%. Duke only shot 63%, but they hit 7 more free throws than Auburn. But I think efficiency is more important than volume here. At the charity stripe, if you are able to kind of go neck and neck with Auburn at the free throw line, both of you shoot like 25 to 30 free throws, and you hit more than them, I think that's more important. The second specific thing that you need to do here, and I think this is the biggest part of this game, you need to have a strong close to the first half and a strong start to the second. The final 10 minutes of the first half need to be yours, and the first 4 minutes of the second half need to be yours offensively. The mental aspect of this game is massive. If you can get them down at halftime, lather them up into a sweat, get them going defensively where they are stressed out, they go to the halftime, they rally physically, and then you beat them mentally coming out of the break by hitting shots, getting to the rim, being aggressive. Every single Auburn game that I have ever watched in my life in the second half features a ton of fouls in the first 4 minutes of the second half. Make that a point. Go out there and attack. Do not let Auburn draw fouls on you. You get fouls and get to the line and hit shots in the first 4 minutes of the second half. If you are able to go on a run between the first and second period, you are going to have success in this game. Mentally, put Auburn in a bind where they have to rush themselves offensively, where they feel a need to, if they get down by 8 to 12 points, you have to get out hot and make them respond to you instead of vice versa. It's what hurt Kentucky against Alabama. Both games, frankly, after they got down 23-4, they had a 23-4 run in the game in Tuscaloosa, and then Bama had a huge run at the beginning of the first game in Rupp, where Kentucky had to essentially respond to them in the second half. Make Auburn respond to you. The third thing here, not only do you have to have a strong close to the first half and strong start to the second, you need to make sure the runs that you go on are exclusive to you. Take a look at this. Here are the games this season where Kentucky had a run in the first half, so like 10-2, 12-2, something like that, and then another run closing the first half into the second. It's happened 4 times this season where they've had 2 runs essentially, and one of them bled into the second half of play. Wright State, first game of the season, 10-0 run in the first half, and then a 23-4 run that bled into the second half. Florida, the game Kentucky won 106-100. Kentucky went on a 21-3 run and then a 10-0 run that bled into the second half. Won that game. Texas A&M, Kentucky went on a 19-3 run that bled into the second half. They won that game. South Carolina, Kentucky went on an 11-0 run early and then a 16-1 run that bled into the second half. Kentucky won that game. Runs have to be exclusive. Why? Well, look at when it happened to Kentucky. Arkansas, the Razorbacks went on a 12-2 run and then an 18-3 run into the second half. Lost. Colgate, 13-1 run, 10-0 run that bled into the second half. Kentucky ended up winning because it was Colgate. Ole Miss, 18-3 run that bled into the second half. Lost. Alabama, I grouped these together because it looks insane. 27-10 run to end the first half that bled into the second, and you lost. Take a look at both the Florida and the Duke games. We'll look at the Duke game first. Auburn went on a 13-2 run to start the game. And then midway through the first half, Duke went on a 15-2 run, and then literally right between the first and second halves, the Blue Devils went on a 13-2 run. Exactly what I'm talking about. Take a look at the Florida game. They went on a 12-2 run in the middle of the first half, a 14-2 run towards the end, and then another 12-2 run that bled from the first into the second half. You have to make runs exclusive, and they have to be at the end of the first and into the second. Control the middle eight, as you would say in football. Make the most out of the break where you come back and they're rejuvenated emotionally and physically, and you crush them. You have to keep them out of this game. Get a lead because, brings me to my fourth point, the best player on the floor, if you rush him mentally and physically, he will make mistakes. Johni Broome, you have to get him worked up, not emotionally, but his clock, his mental clock. You have to get him processing quicker to make a decision quickly with the ball. Rush him in the post. And I don't necessarily mean you run up to him and you foul him. I mean double team him, be handsy without being handsy. Just be energetic. Rush him. Make him feel like something's going on. You look at the Florida game when Auburn got down. Johni Broome was taking awful shots in transition. Baker Mazzara, Pettiford, their roster could not handle the moment when the pressure mounted and they were sped up. Against Duke, they were able to kind of come back into the game and at least keep it close because of the pace of play. Against Florida, though, they could not mentally keep up, and the decisions that they made allowed a collapse. If you can't get him to make a decision with the ball quickly, foul him and put him at the free throw line. Again, I'm not saying you run up and bull rush him, but if he gets to his spots in the paint, don't let him take the shot. Don't let him get a shot so that he can take 2 free throws, guaranteed. Foul him and put him at the line. This is where lineups with Garrison and Williams could be really interesting if you want to double or, again, rush. If Kentucky can, which I think they can, they need to ramp up the pace in this game as it goes and make Auburn as a team and Johni Broome specifically respond to everything as quickly as possible. At the end of the day, what you're looking at here is a game between two groups of college kids. Yes, Auburn is extremely experienced, as is Kentucky. A lot of veteran players on these teams, but they're just kids and young adults at the end of the day. Speed them up. If you can hit shots early, meaning the first half into the second, and you can make them feel pressure, it's going to go a long way for you. I truly believe that. Auburn has a great team. The problem for Auburn and for Kentucky is they've not really allowed themselves to get down to anybody this year. That's why they are so impressive. It's not necessarily the mental resilience. It's the fact that they have just blown every team that they've seen out of the freaking water, minus Duke and Florida. You have to be able to execute. This is an Auburn team, by the way, that's coming in after scoring 106 points against Ole Miss. According to Ken Pom, that is the most efficient outing Auburn has had offensively in the Ken Pom era, in my lifetime, guys. That's the best game Auburn has had, period, full stop, scoring the ball. Kentucky has to make them rush. You have to speed them up. If you do, and you get Broome out of sync and you get inside and you are aggressive on offense, you have to have a lot of energy. You cannot come into this game sleepwalking. You have to come out firing. And I don't mean firing like making every shot you hit. Just be aggressive, be good on defense, get to that 10-minute mark in the first half where things are close, and then go and make a run. If you can do these things, you will, in that second half, control the game mentally, and then it is up to you to win what might end up being a free throw contest, unfortunately. But that's part of it. That's part of the things that you have to do to beat the greatest team in college basketball right now. So those are my opinions. I think Kentucky's going to get it done. I think they find a way to win this game. Give me your score predictions in the comments below. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show here on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. I will see you all tomorrow for a crossover edition of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.